If you're watching this channel, it's because you don't enjoy watching the world squander what Christendom built, and you want to do your part. Today I'd like to mention one means of doing just that. Email made by and for Catholics. Check out Fidei Email. That's FIDEI.email. Built for Catholic individuals, families, organizations, and groups. They're private, secure, and of course Catholic. God bless.
Stories abound of priests leaving the priesthood, as well as, of course, bishops getting canceled. Bishops getting canceled by the authorities in the church actually happens all throughout the year and are given much higher priority in terms of the news cycle by the secular media, by the Catholic media, and by your independent talking heads like myself. We live in an age of priests and bishops getting canceled or quitting the priesthood. If they're getting canceled, it's for speaking the truth, usually. We won't call those priests and bishops who richly earned it by being McCarrick types or being types who steal from the church or whatever, who commit actual crimes. We're not going to say they get canceled. That's justice. Being canceled is a matter of a lack of justice. That their dignity as human beings and as the office they hold having been grossly violated. But we do live in an age, in a season for when priests and bishops get canceled and these stories come out. There have been for several examples, of course. Bishop Strickland, which we'll talk about here in a second, was, canceled in the run-up to Advent. If you remember correctly, November last year. There have been priests recently who decided that they have been convinced that Benedict XVI's resignation was not valid, or that Francis was a material or formal heretic before the conclave that made him allegedly pope, and as such, they can't accept him as pope anymore, and they denounce him publicly as an anti-pope, thus earning themselves the retribution of Francis, in the biggest example of what gets called the Streisand effect, which is if you react, generally speaking, to something in the wrong way, you publicize it, and then it makes people more curious about it. And in this case, the priests repeatedly getting excommunicated, laicized for deciding that Francis isn't actually pope. All it does is give publicity to their claim, and then you drive traffic to Patrick Coffin, Archbishop Vigano, Dr. Ed Mazza, and Barnhart, and the rest of the cast of characters who have various different points that they promote on that issue. No, none of this is a critique of their position either. But there's another way of canceling. This is kind of another thing that happens recently, and a more silent phenomenon. Priests are asking to leave the ministry of the priesthood in order to pursue marriage or other relations. And the highest profile case of this for Americans watching was that of Father Jonathan Morris, who was at one time a Fox News contributor and actually still is. He's just not Father Jonathan Morris anymore. Back in 2019, back in the before times, he left the ministry of the priesthood and has since pursued marriage. It caused a storm of discussion online when it happened. Since then, this has happened countless times, and we have a story of another priest just doing that today. So we go here now to Info Catholica. I'm not even sure why, because this is an American priest, but it gets getting reported in the Spanish Catholic media with the headline, Jesuit Matt Malone, former editor of America magazine, asks for dispensation from clerical status. While I'm at peace with my choice, I'm aware that this news may be a source of disappointment to some of the men and women I have cared for over the past 2 decades. For that, I can only ask for their forgiveness. Now, to his credit, the priest is apologizing for causing scandal among the laity. Anytime a priest leaves like this, it causes scandal for the laity. And the more high profile they are, the more the scandal. You remember when Father Jonathan Morris left the ministry of the priesthood. And I say left the ministry of the priesthood because when you are baptized, you are given an indelible mark on your soul. That's why the church doesn't care. I mean, the does care, obviously, because you're apostatizing, but it cannot just issue a statement saying you are no longer Catholic, because once you have that baptism, you're a Catholic forever. And in the same way, a priest who is ordained has that indelible mark on their soul that they are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek, according to the scriptures. And I will say this, I detest seeing priests leave the ministry of the priesthood in order to pursue some variation of secular life. But it is objectively better that they do so than trying to hide away their issues from public life, which all too often leads to enormous public scandal and grave sin. This is probably better for everyone involved, and I'm sure many of you will be happy to have one less Jesuit around, especially since this priest was at one time an editor for America magazine. So the chance of his being an Orthodox priest are frankly slim to none. After all, you don't You don't see the Father McTeagues or the Father Mitch Packwas of the world running America Magazine, right? They're not the ones we associate with America Magazine. The good Jesuits, the ones that keep the torch of the faith as understood and taught by St. Ignatius of Loyola, they're not the ones running America Magazine, the National Catholic Reporter, or other places that have Jesuit fingerprints on them. Here's what this priest's situation is. Quote, the newspaper of the Diocese of Wilmington in the United States, The Dialogue, reports that the well-known Jesuit Matt Malone has requested dispensation from the clerical state to marry and start a family, as he himself announced on his X account on December 19th. As Gaudium Press reports, Father Malone is well known in the Anglo-Saxon Catholic world for having been president and editor-in-chief of America Magazine from 2012 to 2020, the monthly magazine of the Jesuits of the U.S. based in Manhattan. Father Malone was the youngest editor of America Magazine in its entire history. America Magazine in its later years is characterized by supporting traditional progressive causes, and of course everything James Martin, which is the obsession of many Jesuits today, and he is one of the regular speakers of James Martin S.J. Here's what he has to say. Dear friends, last spring I concluded a month-long retreat with the complete spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius of Loyola. In light of the graces of that time of prayer, I have made an important decision, he wrote. I have written to my superior to inform him that I will not seek full incorporation into the Jesuits and to request that I be dispensed from the obligations of the clerical state. I have made this decision because I wish to be free to have a family if I have the opportunity, he said. He entered Jesuit formation in 2002 and was ordained in 2012. Unlike other communities where religious take final vows before ordination, Jesuit formation continues after the priesthood with a stage called tertianship. Final vows can occur any number of years later, at which point the Jesuit general calls them to full incorporation, something that did not happen with this priest. Now, following Father Malone's request for laicization, a canonical process is initiated, which must be granted an additional dispensation to marry. And then he says what he said at the beginning. He says, I want to emphasize that my decision is in no way a form of protest, he continued. I deeply love both the Church and the Society of Jesus, which have given me everything I have in life, including the spirituality through which I have discerned this path, he noted. End quote. Pray for that priest, that he is actually, that what he believes are graces from heaven are actually authentically, that's what that is, and that he is actually doing the will of God. Because ultimately, leaving the priesthood is not something, and it should be ever done under taken lightly. It should not be a decision you come to lightly. It should be something that happens through deep prayer and the retreat. All the way he did it is great. Make sure it is. Pray that he is actually conforming his will to the will of God in this. But priests leaving the priesthood aren't the only source of scandal vaguely related to this in our time. See, I've been asked recently about the new bishop of Tyler, Texas. The bishop is Gregory Kelly, former auxiliary bishop of Dallas, and we'll call them an unimpeachable source within the Diocese of Tyler, who will remain anonymous for their own protection, sent me a copy of a pastoral letter that the new bishop sent to clergy and laity. And boy, that letter is a doozy. It's very short, but it tells you everything that you need to know about the new bishop of Tyler, Texas. And there's also a news story that came along with it. So I uploaded this the copy of the letter to Google Drive. The bishop's name is Bishop Gregory Kelly. And this letter is dated 5 days ago, December 22nd, 2024, for the fourth Sunday of Advent. I'm going to just skip down to the money part here. I'm grateful to the Holy Father for this surprising pre-Christmas gift, and I am eager to begin this ministry in the new year. I am grateful to Pope Francis for his manner of shepherding the universal church and for his pastoral concern for this local church of Tyler. I am honored that he has entrusted this responsibility to me, and I hope to learn how to best fulfill this ministry. I look forward to getting to know you, to know the richness of this local church, and to learn how to best lead this flock along the path the risen Lord marks out for us to follow together in the time ahead. End quote. And there you have it. He loves the way Francis is running the church. It's all you really need to know. Now, he does go on to say some good and fine things about Christmas, but to see him thanking Francis for his manner of shepherding the church is all you really need to know about him. But if you need more information, here's another piece of news that broke about him basically yesterday. And I have to be extremely careful about this one. There's on Facebook, and I'll have a link to both of this, there is a homily that this bishop gave when he was the auxiliary bishop in Dallas back in 2020 during the summer of group hugs, kumbaya, and love that was extremely fiery and frankly described as peaceful by our betters in the secular rulers. And he gave a homily about the violence happening in America at that time. people taking to the streets about, frankly, a lie about law enforcement going too far in arresting a pretty bad person. And the situation went really, 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 really bad, leading to violence and fires and all the rest. It was also all fake, which is pretty obvious in hindsight, but the result at the time was that the police officer central to the story ended up going to jail. And now evidence has emerged that he was, in fact, innocent. And now he's probably going to be getting a new court proceeding in 2025. So pray that the truth of this matter emerge, because if, in fact, that officer is guilty of everything the secular authority said he was, then, of course, justice demands he be punished for it. But if he is not, as the evidence looks like is the case, then justice demands that the wrongs here be righted. And at that time, a homily back in 2020 emerged where Bishop Kelly said some pretty inflammatory things that sided with the secular authorities and their goal of stirring people up to heinous acts. In other words, the bishop is a progressive political bishop. The false gospel of our rulers is essentially something he endorses. And I wish I could play the homily for you here, but it would absolutely, without question, violate the host rules. So I'll post a link to it at returntotradition.org for your viewing displeasure. It is definitely something that you should see. But that is your bishop in Tyler, Texas, ladies and gentlemen. And I do feel sorry for people who, because this is something that after Bishop Strickland was canceled, people started talking about this. A lot of people moved from around the United States to Tyler, Texas to live under the authority of Bishop Strickland because he was friendly to tradition. Traditional masses flourished there at rates far higher than in other places. He's a good bishop, and people moved across country. And what happened to them? Because now their Latin masses are gone. I think there's one left. But this is kind of a cautionary tale. In a time like this, moving to be with a good bishop is hazardous because all the good bishops will be removed from their positions of authority the longer Francis has to do such things. Because the mark of a good bishop is somebody who stands up and says, hey, what's coming out of Rome is bad, and tries to protect the souls of their flock. And it is meet and just that people feel sorry for what that bishop said or what happened to the people who moved to be with Bishop Strickland. I hope that they found a good solution for where they are. Okay, folks. Traditionalist Catholic asks, is fall of Minneapolis? Yes. 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 That is, to put it mildly, he was a bishop who helped stir that stuff up in his own way. From a couple, from 1,000 miles away, but he still helped. All right, folks. Thanks very much for tuning in. Pray for everybody involved in all of these stories today. Priests, the bishop of Tyler, Texas, and everybody else. We don't report on this kind of news to stir up the pot. The salvation of souls is at stake. The love of God and the love of Holy Mother Church and the integrity of the faith are the most important things. And in that way, people should be praying for the priests and bishops in these kinds of stories. As always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.